Welcome to Leveraging Anonymized Mobile Location Data for Market Research and Advertising. Introducing our speakers, Ben Witten, Head of Real Estate at Placer.ai, and Matthew Kilmurray, Founder and CEO at ApartmentGeofencing.com.
All right. How many of you have gotten an email from somebody in operations and they're really excited, okay, because they just closed a new deal, right? New client. They're bringing on maybe a new development or a new acquisition. They're really excited. They email you and they want you to put together a marketing plan. And so with some trepidation, you go to Google, you type in the address, and you see where the property is located, what neighborhood it's in. You look at the branding of it and you think, can somebody please talk to me next time? This has happened to me plenty of times in the past, and marketing is always the last to know. And I've always thought to myself, how can we get into this process earlier so that the marketing team can help make decisions for these developers that are spending, tens of millions of dollars before the shovel goes in the ground, so that when the product comes to me, I have something that I can believe in and something that I can market. Well, meet Lance. Lance is a multifamily marketer out of Texas. He's not real, we made him up, but we do sometimes dress like this. And he works for a third-party management company. And so in this story of Lance, they're already working with a client. There's 3 properties that they're managing for them in Dallas. But now this ownership group wants to come to Austin, and they don't know the market. So they reach out to their management company, and they're hoping for some information on where they should start their new development. And so he's being asked to go into this meeting to talk to the developer. And what's unique about Lance is that he's being given a seat at the table at the very beginning. But when he's walking into this room, he has to know what's on the developer's mind, right? So he's being asked to provide some insights, but what is the developer thinking? Ben?
Right, so a lot of those questions we often hear, and Lance's client, like a lot of other developers and investors, he's thinking about, where should I invest, right? I'm a fiduciary, I've got to deploy capital on behalf of my investors. Where should I invest those dollars that I've got available? And for the assets that I own and that are in lease-up, how can I optimize the value? How can I optimize the performance of those assets? And both of those questions really go back to, who's my potential renter? And what are their interests? What do they care about, right? What amenities are going to move the needle for them? What are their favorite places? Where do they work, right? Having a holistic understanding of who that renter is really going to help Lance's client achieve optimal success on lease up, on getting a rent premium, and ultimately on the most successful exit, right? When he goes to dispose of the asset or refinance.
But Lance has a problem because the typical information that we've had to go into this meeting has been, maybe they are working with some properties in the area, so they've got some resident information that they can share, but maybe it's not totally comparable. They can use, guest cards there or some surveys that they've done. They can grab some market data from maybe census information, or they can contact their PMS company or ILSs to try to get some information. But Lance isn't feeling confident. He doesn't feel like he can walk in there and help this developer make this, big $1 million decision. Even though he knows from anecdotal, having talked to property managers and regional managers, he knows the market, but he wants some science to back it up. So what if Lance could walk in there and tell them where people are migrating from into Austin, what cities they're coming from, what brand affinities that they have, what the potential renters, how far they're willing to commute, what industries they work in, what their food preferences are based on where they go to dinner, and even their income brackets and age ranges and kind of all of that stuff. That's the science that he needs in that meeting. So with this information, he can help them figure out where to first put that shovel into the ground. So good afternoon, my name is Matthew Kilmurray. I've been in multifamily digital marketing for 20 years, agency, and then I was the VP of digital at Bizzuto and then Avalon Bay. and I'm now the founder and CEO of apartmentgeofencing.com. We also work, beyond multifamily, we also work with retail, hospitality, and that's where I came across Placer and all of the data that they provide, because retail's been using this type of data to make site selection and marketing and product decisions for a while now, and I thought this data is, everybody in multifamily needs to see this, especially the marketers. And with me today is Ben.
Hey, good afternoon. Great to see you all in beautiful Huntington Beach. I lead strategy for real estate at Placer AI. And so, like Matthew said, we're a location analytics platform. And basically what we're doing is aggregating over 30 million mobile devices of anonymized cell phone location data to provide insights on consumers, residents, employees, et cetera, to be able to tell investors and developers like Greystar and Equity Residential in Essex, where folks live, work, and play, and what their favorite places are, brand affinities, et cetera, so that really they can optimize marketing, optimize site selection throughout the whole life cycle of an asset.
Thanks, Ben. So let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about how Placer.ai works. How do you use anonymized mobile location data to kind of bring all these insights together?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. So the way that it works is we're partnering with mobile apps, right? So think of applications, fitness, weather, travel, family apps, et cetera. Within those, the location data is critical for the functionality. And so because of that, the user consents to sharing location data. We partner directly with the application developers. And through those relationships, we're able to aggregate that anonymized data where we're not collecting any personal identifiable information or ad IDs or anything like that. So it's all anonymized in a very privacy-first way where we are CPA, GDPR compliant. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts, right, of how we're collecting the data. Once we've done that, we're able to then aggregate insights. And that's everything from market trends of what are the top ranked Whole Foods in a market, or the people that visit a certain location, where do they currently live and work? We're able to aggregate and provide insights on migration, right, and movement from market to market down to a zip code level to see where in LA are people moving to in Dallas, right, at a zip level on both sides. And so there's really a lot of different ways to leverage the data, but it's everything from, and a big thing we've been hearing about at AIM is, right, like everybody's looking for a way to differentiate and really best deliver messaging to that target renter. And so knowing who they are, knowing where they live, work, and play, knowing their interests, their brand affinities, we're able to deliver those types of insights to say, here are the best channels to then target that audience.
Yeah, and so this is a massive amount of data, and some of the best ways to go through that is to kind of continue our story with Lance. So one of the first things that he's going to want to be able to tell his client is where people are coming from that are moving to Austin. So we're going to dive right into that. Tell us a little bit about net migration.
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned the migration data that we're aggregating. This is just an example. If you look at the Austin Metro, where we're able to see down to a zip code level, right, the change in net migration, monthly in and out, et cetera, where you see some seasonality. What's interesting is like the last few quarters, we've actually seen negative net migration in Austin proper. We've seen some growth, out to the suburbs, et cetera. But what's really interesting is we're able to also look at the income levels and age, et cetera, of folks moving into a market to be able to see, do they tend to be older or younger? Are they more affluent or less affluent? And what are the underlying implications in terms of how we should be marketing to them?
So beyond net migration, we want to know and where they're coming from. What else can we, tell about the people themselves?
And to that point, what you probably can't see it on the screens. The text is a little bit small, but these bars are basically showing age brackets. And the two big takeaways here are that to Austin, people are moving from what tend to be younger areas that over-index in that 20 to 24 age bracket. But also we're seeing migration from areas that tend to be older with a higher 65 plus age. So whether it's kind of housing for folks that are maybe coming right out of college, entering the workforce, or it's senior housing on the top end, we see both of those areas actually happen to be over-indexing, kind of both ends of the barbell. And then what we're also able to do is go a layer deeper and say, okay, we see kind of who's moving. If we peel back the onion a bit further, we can start to understand, why are they moving, right? What are the draw factors into a given market? So this is what we call migration draw factors. And in this report, what we're seeing is that between the origin where people are moving from and the zip code, in this case, that they're moving to, right, walkability is a huge draw factor. The walkability in this zip code is substantially higher than where they happen to have moved from. The job market's also quite a bit stronger, and we also see that it's much stronger in being fit for retirees. And so again, when we think about kind of that 65 plus age bracket that we saw moving into Austin, for this zip code specifically, we actually see that it's also exceptionally fit for retirees. And so back to Lance's client and the developer, right, thinking about what type of product should I build? Should it be active adult? Or should it be, is there a need for, student housing? Really understanding, who those personas are moving into the market, that live in the market, but also what are the draw factors that are really going to differentiate this micro market or sub-market?
Yeah. And so with this data, Lance is now able to go into that meeting confidently, present all of it to the developer. And, so what happens next? Lance goes about his life. He goes back to his day-to-day job. And a couple months later, he just finishes playing pickleball with one of his friends early morning. He gets a phone call. It's from the same SVP, and she's inviting him to join the next meeting. Only this time it's the developer and an interior designer and an outside brand agency. Because in that time, the developer decided not to build a new building, but he's going to acquire one in some of the areas that they found based on the placer data and do a renovation and move a property like a BC property up to an A property. And so that means that the interior designer is there to help with the selections of features and amenities. The brand agency is going to help develop a whole new brand and positioning for the property. And Lance did such a great job. The last time they were wondering if he could tell them a little bit to help guide them in terms of all of those selections. Because again, this is a huge investment for the developer. And typically marketing doesn't have a seat at this table. So the problem though that Lance has with this is that they acquired the property, but the rent roll that's there is not going to be kind of the future resident, right? And so now he has to provide them some demographic data, but he can't use the data that he has right in front of them. So what Lance is going to do is he's going to do a competitive analysis. He was able to find a comp in the area that has a similar rent range and amenity package to what they're trying to achieve. And now he's going to be using some of this anonymized mobile location data to put together some information for those stakeholders. So the first thing he wants to do, though, is look at some new developments in the area, right? So he wants to make sure, because there's a lot of buildings in the area, he wants to see what's being built and when it's going to be delivered. So tell us a little bit about how we can figure that out in the development search.
Yeah, definitely. So inside of Placer, we have a module called Development Plus. And what we're doing here is aggregating planning and zoning data and meeting minutes across the country, right? Coast to coast. And so within that data, we're able to see what new projects are in permitting or under construction. We can get more detail around the unit mix and amenities that are going to be incorporated. And what we can also see are there certain retailers or restaurants or fitness uses or amenities that are entering the market? Because oftentimes, right, we all know that can be a major differentiator. If we know there's a new F45 or an Orange Theory, in for permitting across the street, that may not be common knowledge, but that knowledge could be a game changer, right? And something that we should be leveraging in messaging to our potential residents. And that could also be the difference in, a $2 rent or a $2.25 rent given on the market. So there really are massive implications in terms of differentiation and messaging around the specific amenities that are available to a given site. I see a hand. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. But go ahead.
Say, you have access to the meeting minutes for the zoning meetings?
We do.
That's incredible.
I think so too. Yeah, there it is.
Our first question. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Anytime. So we know where the competition is coming, right? And so one of the first things we want to look at is where do people work in relation to this new location that they just acquired. So talk us through how we can identify not only places of work, but how far it is and industries.
Sure. So it's a common question, right? I've got a development site or I've got a site I'm looking at acquiring. I want to know the people that visit or drive by, maybe during commuting hours, where do they currently live and work? And so within that panel of 30 million mobile devices, we're able to see what are the common home locations at a zip level or census block group level, or fuzzed as a dot density map. But then also, where do those folks actually currently work, right? And so we can actually get down to a geolocation, as you can see on the map, of both current home locations and current work locations. And so that really can have a number of implications. One, it's really around at the inception of a deal, who's my potential renter, right? Where do they currently work? Where do they currently live? Who are they likely to be on the front end? But then also, once I'm in lease up or approaching that phase, understanding, okay, where do I need to be geo-targeting or retargeting based on those current home and work locations?
Yeah, one of the things I like the most about this is you can also start to see the change over time. So we've been looking at this in terms of like work points, and then now that there was COVID and post-COVID and hybrid work and work from home, and seeing how it's shifting within a market to help kind of determine where to move next in the marketing.
And just to that point, I mean, the thing we constantly keep hearing is, like, from the office side, everybody wants to be closer to home, right? Commute is directly correlated to return to office, and so to build new housing that's adjacent or nearby work is obviously highly desirable. So being able to triangulate and say, okay, here's the employment, here's where there's unmet demand for new housing can be really powerful.
Yeah, this would probably be, this is also, a potential treasure trove of insight for any of you who manage or your company manages commercial real estate as well. So we know where they're commuting, but we want to know a little bit more about the type of resident they're going to want to attract. So talk to us a little bit about how we can use this data to put together some demographic profiles.
Sure, so there's a couple different data sets that we partner with. One is Experian Mosaic, and one is Spatial Persona Live. Basically what they're both doing is creating psychographic segments. So think about, right, age, income, interests, employment, et cetera. Within those, we're able to see subcategories and subsegments. So, for example, power elites would be the most affluent households in the country. Within that, we're able to see, okay, what are the top media outlets that they're following, or podcasts they're listening to, or what are trending social topics with that specific cohort. And so we have clients that'll then curate a marketing strategy around those different channels and segments that most resonate with a given audience.
I was wanting to be in the room when Experian had like the naming of all of these psychographic groups, because they did a really good job. One in particular that over-indexes for this in Austin was one called Jet Set Urbanites. And it is like a categorization of shared attributes for a group of people. So this particular one, Jet Set Urbanites, they're upscale urban living, typically multifamily properties. They're highly educated. They are supporters of the fine arts. They're environmental advocates. They're typically politically liberal. And so you take categories like this and you get an understanding of the types of people that we are part of this market. But then you can use the data to go even further and start to say, all right, well, let's match that with the actual locations. Because this developer is going to want to start making some brand partnerships on a local level. And so particularly in this location in Austin, there were 3 that Lance was able to come to the table with and say, these are locations that you really want your feet on the ground to go talk to these folks here. One was the Domain, a Hotel Van Zandt, and they were shopping a lot at 2nd Street District. So these are like the 3 areas that they were going to first target. So one thing to note is that the demographic data used here isn't for targeting, right? Because with fair housing restrictions, we don't want to use demographic data for advertising. But he's at a meeting with a brand agency and an interior designer. And so he's providing all of this data so that they can create a brand that's going to resonate with the potential renter who's going to be interested in the area. And so that's where the value of this really comes in. So, Lance leaves the meeting. It's now been a couple of months. In that time, he got a brand new dog. He's got a puppy. He's not sleeping well. His suit's a little wrinkled now, but he's still living his best life. And he gets another phone call. And now it's the developer again. The apartment community is ready. They're going to start delivering these new units in phases. And they want him to come in and help put together a marketing plan using kind of all of this data that they put together. So, there is a massive amount of use cases for this data, but I'm going to tell you one. So we're a geofencing company, so obviously we would use this for that, but there is tons of use cases for a lot of your other advertising as well. But one product that we launched in particular recently is called Geofence IQ, and we're able to take these locations and put together a list on the outset of where our clients should be targeting in terms of where their prospective residents live, work, and play. So for a long time, us and others in the industry would typically come to you and we'd say, oh, you want to do geofencing or you want to do other mobile location marketing? Here's a spreadsheet, send it to your on-site team, they'll fill it out, they'll send it back to us, and then that's how we're going to get started because I live in Baltimore and I have employees in 18 states, but probably none of them in your local market, right? So we were always leaning on you. We always had clients say, well, can you tell us where to advertise? And so we finally gotten to that place to where we can actually come out of the gate with some recommendations based on all of this data. And so we can take not only the favorite places, but then start to now add trends to it. So market trends are interesting, and I think developers will probably be very interested in market trends. But when it comes to marketing, this, as you know, happens at the neighborhood level, right? So I'm not typically launching a market level advertising campaign for Austin for one apartment community, right? It happens at the neighborhood level, and these trends go down into the neighborhood level. So we can start to see shiftings of patterns and movements within an individual neighborhood because new shops open, some close, things are always changing. And so now you can take these trends over time and add a seasonal prediction to them. And this is really where it's headed, is being able to predict where we should be targeting in the next 3 months, not based on past performance. That's typically how we've always done it, right? So you're looking at keywords, you're looking at geofences, you're looking at other kind of data within paid social and saying, here's what's worked, and so and here's what hasn't. I'm going to make optimizations based on that. But now we can look forward and say, based on these trends that we're seeing, here's where we should be advertising in the next 3 months. And that's based on things that are opening, the movements of individual prospects. And now we're able to kind of get ahead of it. All right, so let's look at some real data. This is for a property in Austin. And we used all of this data to launch this campaign. The campaign itself was across geofencing, paid social, and streaming TV. And so all these stats are stats that you've seen before. But what's the most interesting about it is that it typically takes us 90 days to get to a place where we've optimized a campaign to where it's performing pretty well. Sometimes it can take up to 6 months because it's a bit of spaghetti on the wall, right? And so you launch out the door with certain assumptions, and you figure out in month 1 that some of these are not working well, you pause them, you add some other stuff in each month, right? Well, with this data, we were able to come out of the gate with a campaign that performed above our averages and standards in the very first month. And so it's given us the ability to come out of the gate with a smart marketing campaign, and that's one of the biggest pieces behind it. So in conclusion, thanks to mobile location data, Lance was able to get a seat at the table early on. He was able to prove his assumptions and bring some new assumptions to the table. And he was able to come out of the gate with a smart marketing campaign for his developer. And now Lance can sit back and relax and enjoy his promotion based on all of that work. And hopefully today, I've given you a glimpse on how marketing can start to get to that table. Because I gotta tell you, in other industries, marketing is key in those early stage decisions. And in all of my time in multifamily, I've seen it always kind of lag behind. And I think the science here is something that can get us there at the table. So thank you for your time today. And so we're definitely open for questions. If you have any questions around any particular use cases that you have in terms of areas and how maybe this data could help. If you have any questions about the data itself, we're here for the next couple of minutes. I knew you'd have another question.
Hello, I'm familiar with Placer AI. It's really good. They do great work and great reports in just about every industry. So I'm wondering, Matthew, so does your product leverage Placer AI's data? Do you subscribe to them? If someone in the audience wants to get access to Placer AI, how do you go about doing that? Is it a membership or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great answer. I'll let Ben answer one part of it. So we use it for our geofencing advertising, right? So it helps us to put together both the initial recommendations and then the seasonal predictions. But it's really kind of like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what the data can be used for. So we use it for digital advertising, but the Placer platform itself can be used by developers and operations teams for all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah, and to your point, right, there's a number of use cases. There's a ton of different data in there. We really package based on what the user needs at the end of the day. And so the way that we work typically is it's a monthly subscription, a 12-month model. But we're flexible in terms of packaging, like I said, of the specific data sets and features. We do have a mobile app, so if you want to check out Placer AI, we're on the App Store, and there's a free version you can download and check it out.
Yeah, I mean, we went with Placer because of, I think they're best class in the industry, but there are others, not to like throw that out there, but using this type of data that retail's used for site selection for quite some time is something that I would encourage all of you to start looking into, and how you can arm your development and operations teams with a little bit more science when you're making decisions.
Yeah, to that point, like we started in the retail space. We work with Whole Foods and Target and folks like that, and they're using the data for site selection and marketing. And we're kind of in the early innings of seeing the adoption for multifamily, but it's super exciting.
It is.
Okay, so you mentioned that you're using mobile app data when the user enables location tracking.
That's right.
Okay. When a user enables location tracking only when the app is active, does that affect your data collection process?
So it does, based on the permissions given, right? The apps we partner with generally have location enabled always or on an ongoing basis, and that's what enables us to have that holistic visibility into what we call the visitor journey around favorite places and what other grocery store or gym or coffee shop somebody might go to.
Yeah, but it's important to know that a lot of this is taking assumptions, a lot like when they say we've polled 1,000 people and we think this person is going to win to be president. So you can take a sample of data, and you use sample data all the time, and expound upon it to make marketing decisions. And actually, if you use all the data, it'd be too much, right? You have to sample this size data set in order to be able to move within it and get to the information fast. That's a great question.
Any other questions?
You were talking about using the data mostly to determine where to build a property and advertise, but if you're an existing property, this data can also help an apartment marketer know where to advertise occupants or vacant units in their community in a given neighborhood, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the land story today was one use case, but we often use it to say, all right, well, let's look at a competitor who's doing really well. Like, where are they pulling their people from? And then we start to realize that people are coming to one of our competitors, and we just missed the boat on that one. And so it really helps us to shift our advertising in order to get in front of the right people.
Sure. So if you couldn't hear, the question was, do we offer consultation services with Placer? So we have a assigned customer success representative that's working with similar types of customers. And so what they're doing is helping to apply best practices. We do have a separate consulting division, and so we certainly can do that in certain instances. Yeah, definitely.
Great presentation, thank you. Have you layered over additional data sets like pricing or concessions within the market to understand how migration from demographics impact pricing performance?
That's a really good question. So we have done the analysis and looked at some markets like Tampa and Orlando specifically, where we've seen that higher income migration was influencing rent growth in a disproportionate way. And so for zip codes that had a lot of high income migration moving into those areas saw outsized rent growth. It's something we're kind of testing in the early phases right now. It's not built into the product, but it's something that we have studied kind of on an ad hoc basis. It's data we'd love to integrate ultimately, but don't have it today.
That's a really great question. All right, well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.